Signs, actual or potential? I'm Oliver Perrin for Semiagog. Tonight I'd like to introduce a couple of clips I'll be posting immediately after this one. Both, like this one, have to do with marks and the ways that people use them to stimulate, regulate, and integrate human behavior. Almost all of us speak with words, and likewise we all tend to think with words, or render our thoughts communicable, if not rational, by converting them into words. Thereby we are, for the most part, chained within a prison of word-based reasoning. This is mentioned within the Tao, wherein we find the following passage: "Abandon learning, and your mind will not be vexed by doubt. Though tight the net of words may bind, how surely truth slips out." Among other things, this refers to a prison of syntax, fortified with bars of ink. But truth with a capital T, or even with a lowercase t, is not the only thing that slips out. Other things that words cannot consistently capture and transmit include ancient techniques for behavioral manipulation, ancient techniques that precede word-based reasoning, and the speech upon which that reasoning depends. I go into this sort of thing further in the next two clips. My aim here with this one is only to introduce those two clips that will follow. So I'll say this: the manipulation of herds is achieved through sub-rational channels of influence. I worked in advertising, so I saw this every day. And I saw that the primary vehicle of sub-rational influence was the mark. In the case of advertising, marketing, and public relations, that mark is the brand mark. Irrespective of the languages we might speak or the writing systems we might use, all human beings across the globe use non-linguistic marks to organize their behavior. And what of these marks? A mark can appear to dance. A mark can seem dynamic, even if it appears in a stable, persistent, visible form. It can appear to whirl, like a swastika, or to project stability, like a perpendicular cross. It can warn, like a biohazard or radiation symbol. It can elicit violence, mass hysteria, religious reverence, disdain, shouts of approval, and even incredible levels of human cooperation. And while these marks can be referred to in spoken language, or discussed in spoken or written language, at their core they operate without any need for language, whether spoken or written. This is because the human use of marks precedes, as an ineluctable historical fact, human mark use precedes spoken language and word-based reasoning. But most people aren't aware of this, even in academia. Their linguistics reigns supreme. Their linguistics is assigned primacy among all the possible avenues of human communication. It now even dominates the so-called humanities. But even leaving aside the limited arc of reality visible to those wearing fashionable academic blinders, in some ways it is difficult to talk and write about marks simply because they're central to the world of influence that operates outside of the domain of words and letters themselves. Much has been made of the supposed division of history into oral and then literate phases. This is nonsense. Marks provide, and have always provided, a visible basis for behavioral integration that is more lasting than speech. They therefore have provided a basis for cultures to articulate, since long before spoken language or writing proper ever made its appearance. And they continue to operate, for the most part, outside our conscious awareness, even up to the present day. I recently talked about some of these ideas in a discussion with Michael Black. For those who are interested in the subject, I'd recommend that you check out that full discussion. The title is Willing Slaves, a conversation with Michael Black, if I remember correctly. And the thumbnail reads, Exploiting Human Herds. If you just want the immediately relevant information from that clip, the remarks in question, I just checked, run from right about the 35-minute mark to just past the 1 hour mark. In that clip, I talked about the fact that marks are how herds are organized. I discussed how marks are central to distinctions made within herds, no less than they are to the orderly arrangement and exploitation of those herds. That's why we brand cattle and record those marks for reference in cattle registries. That's why we protect legal trademarks. That's why intangible brands and the marks that embody them are today recognized as more important than the products that those marks are placed upon or the services that they actually signify. This is why corporations are increasingly looking to an index of brand value, though the industry players who have attempted to get involved with this are, facing the challenging task of finding a way to quantify brand value. But indexes are out there. You guys can check it out. The point being that they have come to the realization that this intangible group of associations, of ideas, concepts, values, and memories that we call a brand, and that is embodied in any instance of a brand mark, is itself more valuable than the services or products that they offer. But how do we come to an understanding of these marks, these non-linguistic marks, these marks that operate beyond, or at least beneath, the realm of word-based reasoning? These marks that have, for at least tens of thousands of years, exerted influence on our behavior or served as mnemonic anchors for human cultures long before writing proper appeared and began to spread. The two videos that follow this one represent a part of my attempt to answer this question. If all of this really cranks your tractor, you can read more about my research and ideas in the following publications, which I just now realized I forgot to take to my desk. So hang on, I'm going to get them. Okay, the first and probably the most important of them, the one that at least I worked on the most, is called Traditional Marking Systems, a Preliminary Survey. It's a big fat book, and it's full of all kinds of information on mark studies. It's a collection of essays. I was one of 3 editors for it. I was one of the writers on the introduction, and I wrote one of the articles included in it. It's a great little book, my first serious and long-term project with academic publishing. Another one is an article published in Language Sciences. This is an Elsevier publication. It's volume 33, issue 4 from July 2010. I have one article that is published in this because I had less to do with all of it and just that one article. I should probably tell you what the name of that article is so you can find it. It's called Marks, a distinct subcategory within writing as integrationally defined. That has to do with integrational linguistics and Roy Harris, but I would expect only people into linguistics or, obscure specialists to know anything about Harris, who's a remarkable scholar. And the last that you can look at is Remarks. This is a journal, the Journal of Signum, International Society for Mark Studies. I was one of the editors, and my article in this one is entitled The Mark of Commerce, Uncertainty in Mark Predication. So the Remarks is issue 1. That's a periodical, a journal, 2013. I just gave you the title of the article. Language Sciences Elsevier, I gave you that information. And traditional marking systems, the last thing I should add is that it was published, double check, in 2010. In any case, coming to a more complete understanding of marks promises to open up whole new perspectives. In fact, a better grasp of how they can be used, of how they always have been used, would likely shed important light on periods of our past that I call unhistorical and sub-historical. After all, history itself demands writing proper in order to form the very documentation that makes the discipline possible in the first place. The prehistoric is precisely the time before written records, yet long before we had writing proper, and even long before we had conventional spoken language. We had marks. We learned of them from the other animals around us, who'd been using them to write upon and read within their environments long before humans, hominins, or even hominids ever existed. This is why these marks can legitimately be called beast marks. The marks that are today used to organize and control the world, that have always been used to organize and control the world, are essentially beast marks. They were first the marks made by beasts, and they were later adapted by humans to become the marks placed upon beasts, placed upon herds, placed on our fellow men, at first in a very physical sense, though later in a variety of other ways. As I mentioned in the clip with Michael Black, marks were predicates about the environment or about objects within it. And by placing our marks on or in our environment, or the objects it contains, animate or otherwise, we render these things subject. This fundamental idea of subject and predicate underpins the grammar of many human languages, and I think ultimately derives from the ancient human habit of mark use, of using them to signify ownership, to proclaim relationships, to signal dominion, or to give a warning. So there's your introduction. 2 clips will follow. The first is a recording I made of my presentation at a conference on mark studies hosted in the Swedish Parliament in Stockholm in 2012. The second shows my presentation at a conference on writing held at Leiden University in 2014. Now, some of you may have seen that I am running a series on meme magic. I put out the first of the clips on that subject. But I have to say that the information included in this series on marks is perhaps some of the most important knowledge to be acquired as regards meme magic and human manipulation. Those of you interested in such things will, I hope, take note. I should also add that my work rests on academic work done by others, which is always the case, and I acknowledge this in my publications, and you can have a look at the notes and the bibliography. I've also benefited from discussion with many perceptive people, Tim Rudisil among them, which probably won't surprise many of you. But I want to point out that this is my research. This isn't something I read elsewhere and borrowed whole cloth. I had to discover, to uncover this, for the most part entirely on my own. So I hope you find the upcoming 2 clips to be worth your time. There might be more of them coming in the future, but for now there's plenty to chew on for anyone who cares to. It can be challenging to follow here and there, but I think the game is very much worth the candle, as they say. Get it? Got it? Good. Semiagog out.